I think it really started off really well. And we went over our I can statements, and we took time to really make sure that the children understood the standard before we even kind of started in it. And like we were talking about, there were two components to the standard. They needed to understand the author's point of view, and then they needed to understand how they could either agree or disagree once they realized what the point of view of the author was. So there was several components of the standard, and I think to really understand the standard, they had to understand all components of it. We started off with the toolkit lesson, and that went really well because it was a shorter text, and there was kind of just one point of view through the whole article, so they did really well with that. We have the Turn It Off coming up, so they kind of connected with that, so they already had a little bit of knowledge going into it. And but yeah, I mean, I think it started off well. Where we kind of ran into trouble was like towards the end of the week, where they had it was more towards the end of the gradual release, and they were more independent. And when I was bringing back the small groups to kind of check for their understanding, you kind of realize, well, hey, when they're having to do it independently and they're having to find evidence in the text, they're having a little bit more difficulty with it. And the text was a little bit longer because they had the level readers, and I think it might have been a little overwhelming for them. So if I could go back.
You use science readers to teach that too.
Yes, they coincide.
Non-fictional week.
Okay. So
good. Okay. Now, when we were planning, we looked at the Insight tool, and we started with kindergarten and went on through 5th grade. Do you feel like that was helpful in your planning?
Absolutely, because I know since these standards are new, these kids in this 3rd grade are not going to. I can't know for sure that they've gotten all of these components this year. So coming into this year, so I had to make sure that they maybe had an understanding of this before we actually got into the 3rd grade standard. And I also wanted to see where they were going to go so they could be ready for next year. I mean, especially if they're getting it, why not take it, a step further and kind of look to see where they're going, what they can be doing.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, and then so for 3rd grade, it was distinguish their own point of view from that of the narrator or those of the characters. And with the Insight tool, we know that the students need to know that readers are entitled to a point of view that's different from the narrator or characters. But then you didn't stop there, like you said. When you're looking at 4th grade, you were really good about distinguishing the difference between first and third person narrations, which was so important. So you did a great job filling in those gaps and continuing on.
Thank you.
Okay, now we also use the depth of knowledge, Webb's depth of knowledge in your planning. How do you feel like you did integrating a variety of levels?
Good. I mean, a lot of the kids do these things. They just don't really understand the vocabulary that you're using. So that's one of the things that I wanted to get into is like if we're using level 3, they can prove themselves, which is level 4. But, when you go back to the word citing evidence, they're citing evidence. They just sometimes don't realize it's called citing evidence. And so I wanted them to realize that you're already doing a lot of these things, and that kind of gives them, the confidence to keep going. And the book that we read, The Adventures of the Plastic Water Bottle, the way it was designed through the story going through the water bottle, they were actually able to do that also.
To look kind of at the structure, the craft of the author, how he went about telling the story. And, we've talked about how you do need to use all of the different levels. We're not just striving to meet level 3 and 4, but to
they're
build,
all important.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
they are all important. And so, Recognized was one that we did, that we talked about, and Recite, when the kids were going back and working in collaborative groups, or when they were doing their post-it note, that was something that they did. Relate. You did a lot of that in your whole group, having the kids relate to the things that they're using. And I thought the book was really cool how it was talking about the water bottle. What was it? The particles in the water bottle and a sweater?
Yes.
I was like, what? So I learned something new too. Yeah. So anyway, I think you did a great job using all of the levels. Does it make a difference when you're planning, when you're making your lesson plans using Webb's depth of knowledge and using the Insight tool? Does it really?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it does, because you really want to make sure that not only you understand like what level you're teaching, but that you, like you said, you don't just jump in right here. I mean, there's other sections, you know, it's like the layer, like y'all said, it's like the layer of a cake. You have to make sure that they're understanding the other parts before you can't just jump into that.
Yeah.
Because then they're going to start off being like, oh my goodness, I don't understand this, and they just shut down. So
Yeah.
you kind of need to build their confidence,
Absolutely.
yeah, and then kind of work into it.
Okay.